And this is different than anything, any clinic around.
Workouts that are tailored for her, and that really makes a difference.
Really personal. I've gotten way more mobile, stronger, flexible. Just everything just improves me to the next level.
Welcome to the On Cue Performance Therapy Podcast, where we push sports performance and physical therapy to its apex. We change the game by bringing together the brightest minds in the field to offer best practices and question how things are done today. I'm your host, Mike Quinones, physical therapist and expert in sports orthopedics. I'm living my dream and opened a clinic that unites all elements of sports medicine under one roof to drive recovery and performance outcomes.
What's happening, Performance Therapy Nation? This is Mike Quinones, your host of the On Cue Performance Therapy Podcast. This is episode 1, season 2. They brought us back for one more season, so I'm pretty stoked about that. I'm here today with Chris Newell. Chris Newell is a good friend of mine and a great athlete. He is a freshman at the University of Virginia, baseball player, center fielder. Second team All-American selection by Collegiate Baseball Newspaper. Listed as ACC's best freshman by D1Baseball.com. Started all 18 games at center field as a true freshman. Led the team batting average, RBI, stolen bases, on-base percentage. Virginia, the Cavaliers are no slouch in baseball. They're actually one of the best. Division I programs compete in the playoffs every year for an NCAA championship. Hence why Chris has chosen to play there, not to mention a great school academically. Chris went to Malvern Prep. At Malvern Prep, 3 state championships, 2019 Pennsylvania Gatorade Player of the Year, 2019 Under Armour All-American, 3-year letter winner, served as team captain. Chris is blushing. He was drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals, 37th round. But to my understanding, and this is somewhat new to me, I'm more of like a football, basketball. Like I see those drafts more. The baseball draft is kind of like, I don't know, at least for me, is like behind the like closed doors. Like it's like on MLB Network, and they do a great job. Actually, I was watching the year you were drafted, and Chris had an opportunity to be drafted much higher than that. And what it comes down to, it's a financial decision, and the team that has the opportunity to draft a player. It's interesting how it all goes down, but Chris essentially turned down an opportunity to play in Major League Baseball well before the 37th round, where he was selected, and chose to go to UVA. And at UVA, that's a commitment to UVA for how many years, Chris?
For 4 years.
For 4 years. So you have to. That's what's different than other sports. In that, if you go to play basketball, you can go one and done and go right to the NBA, or you can play overseas right away and earn. In football, you have to play at least 3 years you have 3 years post high school that you can enter into the draft. In baseball, if you decide not to go play in the bigs, you have to commit to 4 years of high school baseball or college baseball before you get drafted, before you have the opportunity to get drafted again, which is interesting. So you have the opportunity to get drafted twice then, right? Once out of high school, once out of college.
Yep.
All right, so tell me a little bit about your background. Newtown Square kid, had a lot to do with putting this together, introducing myself and Jordan, as we've talked about in earlier podcasts. Tell me about your background a little bit. What got you into baseball, and how long have you been playing for?
Yeah, so I'm from Newtown Square, born and raised Delco kid, got it in the blood. I actually live near Newtown Edgemont Little League, so baseball is pretty much all in my life for as long as I can remember. Parents signed me up for baseball when I was about 4 or 5. Every spring I'd walk up to the field every day, play my game, go home. So it just became part of my life, and I became obsessed with it, and it's kind of how I got to where I'm at today. But I work out here at PTW, and I come in for treatment with Mike on the PT side of things here. And like Mike said, I went to Malvern Prep. Played baseball there, a little bit of basketball, and middle school, just public school, Paxton Hollow. Yeah.
So this is, in my opinion, at least in Delaware County, Newtown Square, Broomall, that area is like the mecca of baseball. Like when you were at Malvern, 3 state championships, and that's private school, right? And then in the public school sector, Marple Newtown High School won the PIAA state championship. I mean, you could have been on that team. Like a lot of those kids could have been on Malvern's team.
All those kids are my best friends. I grew up playing with them.
That's fascinating to me. That 2 state championships were won in different avenues, I guess you could say, one through private school, one through public school in Newtown Square. I mean, Malvern Prep is in Malvern, but
pretty close.
Pretty daggone close.
Yeah.
So, and there's so many travel teams in this area. What was that like? Like you said, baseball was always a part of your upbringing. Was it all year round? Was it like you and your friends? That was like kind of something you guys all did together. What was that like growing up in the Mecca?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll start off with just Little League. Obviously played at Newtown Edgemont. Played with all my buddies from school, from the Newtown Square area at least. It was all pretty much fun and games until your 12-year-old year where you start to play districts. Well, your last year of districts and your road to Williamsport. So kind of had some bad blood that year with my boys from Marple, South Marple, Media. But, I mean, the next year we all decided to play together in our local Babe Ruth League. And we knew in Little League that we were all talented, and we kind of had some ideas for what was going to happen when we all decided to play for Babe Ruth next year. So basically how it works was that all the Little League teams from Newtown Square, Marple, South Marple, all combine. So basically that whole spring, my 13-year-old year, I was going to Paxton Hollow, which was the public school, and then playing in that league. So I was just with my friends all the time, playing with them, against them, whatever. And then this was probably one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life. But when I was 13, we had the tournament team, and we ended up being pretty good, I'd say. We ended up going to the Babe Ruth World Series and winning that whole thing. So we were best team in the country my 13-year-old year, which is pretty special, and it definitely says a whole lot about baseball here in Delaware County. So it was pretty cool to be able to represent that.
Was that so most of those kids ended up going to what high school?
From that team?
Yeah.
Marple, Malvern, Archbishop Carroll, and O'Hara.
Wow. And Carroll's always been good at baseball. At least, you know, I went there my freshman year, and they were all studs. They were a great baseball team. That's cool because everyone talks about that 12-year-old travel team. And then what happens after Little League, after your last year of Little League, which is the opportunity where they have an all-star team from that Little League team, and they go to they have the opportunity to get to Williamsport. The Little Leagues almost like tag team, like they join together, sometimes like 2 Little Leagues, to create a Babe Ruth League. And that Babe Ruth League, at least when I had played, was essentially like a Little League where you had everyone could play, like the kids didn't get cut.
Yeah.
And then you would have an all-star team from that, which essentially is how it worked in Little League.
It's basically a Little League on steroids.
But because you're bringing together multiple Little Leagues, right?
Yep.
Because after that 12-year-old age, like a lot of kids decide not to play anymore.
You get that, and a lot of kids decide, especially now, start to play travel ball instead of Babe Ruth. But when I was 13, it was kind of like on the verge. Some kids, not from this area, but other areas that I were friends with, would go play travel ball. But we kind of all just decided to stick to it and play Babe Ruth, and it ended up working out for us. But as the years went on, it started to flip sides a little bit, and then kids were starting to switch over to travel ball, myself included, my 15-year-old year, but that's another story. But yeah.
And I think that's pretty neat because a lot of athletes get a taste of like legitimate competition, and that separates themselves from everybody else. And that seems like that was a taste of like you realize then like, all right, I fit in, like I could do this.
I would say that was probably one of the first times where I kind of thought that I belonged in baseball. It's kind of where I found myself, and still to this day, probably one of the coolest things I got to do was go play in a World Series with my best friends that I've been friends with forever. So
that's pretty neat. Really neat to play with all those kids at once. And I have some experiences like that too in football and playing all-star teams and so forth. All right, so you had Tommy John surgery your sophomore year. You're left-handed, swing lefty, throw lefty, center fielder. So pitching wasn't you weren't obviously dependent on pitching, but dive into that a little bit. Tell me about that experience, Tommy John, and how hard were you throwing? How often were you throwing? What do you feel like led to you getting Tommy John surgery?
Yeah, so like Mike said, I got it my sophomore year of high school. Towards the end of the summer, I finished up that year at the spring with Malvern, and then went and played summer ball. And during the spring, I had pitched here and there, but never kind of stuck to it. I was more just an outfielder, and then I would come in like I only threw maybe 10 innings or so, but I threw hard, so that's why I would go in. And then that summer, I was playing outfield for a travel team, and they needed somebody to throw. So, I mean, I never had really taken pitching so seriously because I was more relying on being an outfielder, and I would just be like, okay, they need me to throw an inning, I'll go throw an inning, no big deal, whatever. And so they needed a pitcher that summer to come fill in for a few innings, one game, and I still remember it very vividly. I went and warmed up, felt fine. Came into the game, adrenaline was pumping. I was like, I'm going to get after it here. I'm going to throw hard. That's what I'm here to do. We were playing the older travel team that was the national team, so I was like, okay, like I'm here. I'm gonna blow by these kids. So I get on the mound. Was throwing like 94, and I remember like one pitch, I threw it, and then I just got like a numb, tingly feeling from my elbow to my fingertips, and I didn't really think much of it at the time because I never had felt anything like that before. But you know, I just didn't take myself out because I didn't know, so I just kept throwing, and I ended up throwing like 2 innings or so. And after the game, I went up to my dad and I was like, Dad, my arm, I've never felt this way before in my life with my arm. Like, something's wrong. And we were in North Carolina, so flew back home. On the plane ride home, couldn't put my elbow on the arm of the chair on the plane. I was holding it. So obviously went and saw a doctor, got an MRI. UCL was completely torn. But we found that out, and I finished playing that summer. I didn't stop playing. So I played through it, and because it was already torn, it couldn't do anything else.
So hold on. So why? And I'm not saying that's a bad decision or not or what have you, but what was the angle there? It was already torn, so play through it. What was the plan for surgery? We're not going to do surgery until the state. Why would you wait?
We were going to wait until September because the recovery time, in order for me to be able to hit, would have been 6 months. So from September to, I think it was like February or March, whatever, that first day was the first day of practice for Malvern. But, I mean, honestly, the doctor said that it was already torn. So, like, obviously don't go out there and try and throw somebody out from the outfield. But, like, if they need you to play out there, like, you're fine to play. Just don't kill yourself.
I would imagine it's the opportunity that, I would imagine that they probably acknowledge, the doc acknowledged, like, okay, if you get surgery right now or if you wait 2 months, that's not going to speed up your right. There's no difference in your ability to throw next year, like this upcoming spring.
Yeah.
Hitting will be an option no matter what for you, and I think it was.
Yes, so I was still able to hit when I did do it at first. And at the time, I was playing for a really good travel team, and, like, that was the year when I was really, like, I had already committed to UVA, but it was still, we still had, like, some of the most important tournaments of the year, and we were trying to win them, so I wanted to be out there and compete for my team. So
do you feel like that helped your commitment to you? Like, so you had committed to UVA prior to getting
when I was 15, and this was when I was 16.
Okay, right. So you had committed to UVA, 15 years old, tore the ligament, and you can comment on this if you want, but like I tore my ACL a few times, and like being someone who played like kind of like a slot receiver, running back, like when you know something's wrong with, in my case, like my knee, or a thrower, like a center fielder's case, baseball player, like they're throwing elbow, like it's like I don't have it, like it's gone.
Yeah,
like, I mean, something is so wrong. Like I don't feel like with that. Well, who am I without that?
Yeah,
especially at that age, because like that's your identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to speak.
Yeah,
for
I mean, at that time, baseball was like, that's how I was known. Like I was this kid who was going to Virginia to play baseball, and now I tear my UCL, one of the worst surgeries in baseball. Now, I mean, it's not too bad because they've done it so much, and there's a lot of science behind it.
Like five years ago.
Yeah, just the thought of it, like, it's how you throw. Your UCL is torn. It's basically all I had at that point. So it's honestly scared me so much.
And that sounds like and I'll be honest with you, Chris, is like listening to that, it's like, that's all I had. It's like, come on, man. Like come on,
I was young.
I
was young.
But you're right, though. Like, that's a psychology that I think especially medical professionals need to understand, and probably even more so parents. Like, your identity has been, like, I go play baseball. Like, I wake up, I play baseball. I go to school, I go play baseball. I participate in baseball all the time. That's my life. I'm going to play college. Like, if baseball's so important to you, and at that point in time, like, that's at risk now. Like, you committed to a school, like UVA.
Yeah.
And now it's like, what does that mean? Like, what, are they going to care?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's your identity. That's how you've identified yourself. You're a ball player, right?
Yeah.
And now you took my most important weapon away from me.
Yeah.
So tell me about like the psychology of that, right? Like, and you're at a school like Malvern Prep, which is an amazing school, and you're playing baseball there. So tell me what that's like socially and academically. Like, how did that affect you, that injury?
Yeah. I would honestly say that was probably one of the best things that's ever happened to me, even though I tore my UCL. It gave me a lot of time to think about and work on other things. I can tell you when I tore my UCL, I think I was 168 pounds, and then I came out of it 185 pounds. So I took a step back, and even though I couldn't play, I wanted to find something that I could improve on, and it was my body because I was skinny as a rail, and that was probably honestly a part of why I got hurt. And this is when I really started to turn it on with Jordan on the strength side. So, I mean, I had gotten the surgery, and I sat down with Jordan, and we kind of formulated a plan where I needed to come see him work out, do what I could, even though at the time I was in a brace. And we kind of created a little bit of a meal plan for me, and those were two things that I really worked on physically, was lifting and eating. And then mentally, I had to take another step back because, like what you said, I thought that baseball was all that I had, and I kind of just took a step back and appreciated some things that I had never really thought about before, and it made me just appreciate where I was and like things that I had. Yeah,
it's a humbling experience.
Yeah, I definitely
mean,
it was.
It makes you think about like, what do I actually have control over?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Is what I would imagine. So you have control over your body. Jordan can help you with that.
Yeah.
And then your mind, like, wow, I do really appreciate like when you came out and they were like, all right, you can throw again. When Doc told you, like, cleared you to throw, you're like, wow, this is cool. I get to throw.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I get to cut. Like, that's why I felt like, oh, I get to, like, do, like, 90-degree cuts. Like, man, I can't wait to get out to practice. I hated football practice. But
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to get out after that surgery. You just appreciate it differently. So I think that's super important to get out of this podcast today. Like, the psychology of an injured athlete, especially when that is, like, their identity. And Chris is a great example. Like, it's humbling, and there's a couple different directions it can go. Unfortunately, I've seen both. And like you said, it's the best thing that's ever happened to you. That's crazy to think. That you got a lefty who's a sophomore throwing 94 miles an hour and destroys his elbow, so he thinks, and it's the best thing that ever happened to him. And you know, he had a great year last year at UVA. That's cool.
You hear it so much, is how you handle adversity. And I saw it firsthand with myself. And I knew that I had to come out of the situation better than I came into it. And that's kind of the mindset that I had. And the rehab process, as most people know, is grueling. It's 12 months full recovery. So it was 6 months till I could swing. So, I mean, like, even the smallest things, when I was in the brace and then I got it off, whatever, just being able to flick a baseball again was like one of the best feelings I ever had. Just to be able to do that again, like, just step by step appreciating the little things just added up towards the end. But like, it just made me appreciate the little things in that and in my life too.
Do you still feel that way? Have you lost that, or does that still kind of stick with you?
I still have that, just appreciating the little things in my life. I say it to so many people that I know. There's people who can count me in for that, but I mean, I say it all the time. But that's definitely one thing that I got out of it. Just appreciate the little things.
That's it. That's dope, man. That's deep stuff, and that's special. Thanks for sharing that, man. That's it's not easy to talk about either, and it's not long ago.
Yeah,
4 years ago, maybe. So, cool, man. I'm happy we dove into that. So I want to talk about training. That kind of like gave you a taste of it, right?
Yep.
Training with Jordan, went from 160 something to 180 something. So what kind of training have you experienced since then? You obviously at UVA, at Malvern Prep, and how is it different? How's it developed? How's your training program developed over the years?
Yeah. So I did, throughout high school, I did almost all my stuff with Jordan. I've been with Jordan since I was 12 years old. So I've been with him for however many years now. I trust him my life. So, I mean, when I was 12, we were doing little stuff. It's all about just laying the groundwork, stuff like that, like form and stuff. And once I got to high school, we started to add some weight on, bigger lifts, things like that. And I think one thing that sets Jordan apart is not focusing more on the bigger lifts, more on the smaller ones and things like that, like single leg stuff, like balance stuff, mobility. It's stuff that you really don't get a lot, because you get some people who are just like, oh, go lift this, go bench press this, things like that. And Jordan isn't like that at all. I think he'd kill me if I tried to go bench press right now.
It's funny. There was a podcast, Eric Cressy shared. Actually, it's his podcast, and it was should pitchers bench press, and I shared it with the group, and it was just the title. Jordan was the first to comment to the group, no, in all caps. And the right answer was like, it depends. Right?
Yeah,
like,
it does. It does depend how you do it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And what are you combining with it? But it was funny. He jumped all over. He said no.
Yeah.
So, all right. So Jordan's training, I've seen it firsthand here. We've been working together for a year and about a year now, and it's changed. I've seen it change already over time, and I'm sure that's like just how Jordan's brain works. Mm-hmm. So, tell me how that's different than or the same as what you've done at UVA, because it seems like it's been Jordan even through Malvern. Did you do anything different while at Malvern, or you kind of were still?
I was still with Jordan. Yeah.
Okay, and then so I'm curious about at UVA. How has your training changed at UVA compared to what it's like with Jordan when you're home, or Jordan leading up to UVA?
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff that I did do with Jordan has translated. at school we do a lot of power cleans, cleaning, things like that, hang cleans, and my form is all from Jordan. And even from last year to this year, throughout the quarantine period we had at home, I had heard a lot from my strength coach at school about how much my form has improved from even just the spring last year. So, I mean, you just take that little period, that just shows you how much you can improve in such a little period of time. But, I mean, throughout the quarantine, I was here with Jordan working, so that obviously translated back to school. But a lot of the stuff I do with Jordan, we do at school, so tells you he's doing something right.
Sure. How about cardio-wise? I remember you saying a lot, at least when you first got up to school, about running.
Yeah.
Were you doing more? Because here, I mean, you guys do sprints here. You guys hit the bike. What kind of the assault bike and the assault treadmill. What kind of stuff are you guys doing? Are you doing any kind of cardio at school?
Yeah. So every fall is like our conditioning period where we practice scrimmage, things like that, inter squad. And we also have a conditioning side to it. It's called the Iron Cavalier Challenge. We do that. We lift. Once we get to school in the fall, we lift, do like smaller conditioning sessions, like 100-yard sprints and increments, stuff like that. But once we wrap up our fall, we have the Iron Cavalier Challenge, which is a 2-week period before we go home for a break. And that's just filled with all sorts of challenges. And this is my second year doing it, and I can tell you anything, it's more mental than physical, honestly. They try and push you to your limits and see where your breaking point is, and they try and just make you mentally stronger. But we do a lot in that 2-week period. A lot of conditioning. It's called the Disharoon Dash. You have to run stadiums. I could bore you to death with all that stuff, but we do have a 2-week conditioning period where we do tons of cardio and stuff like that. And the smaller stuff that we do here with Jordan, like the assault runner and things like that, do translate. So that is a help.
I think that's all like strategy, right? Like I remember 6 a.m. workouts and they were hell in college, but it's all a strategy to get you guys, the team, closer together and like root out the week. And if you can survive, the 2 weeks that you're talking about, like you can come back in the bottom of the 8th or 9th inning. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you this. We run these things called 300s. It's basically 300 yards. You have to make them in 55 seconds. And
how many yards in back? Is it 25 in back?
It's just a straight 300. So
okay.
It's like a square. You have to run around.
Okay.
There's cones. If you knock over a cone, extra one, stuff like that. But when we like do the last part of it, when we didn't do it this year because of COVID, but last year when we would do it, we were supposed to do 9 of them. So what do you think the last 3 are? 7, 8, 9. The 7th inning, 8th inning, 9th inning. And it's all about how tough you can be in the back 3 innings of 7, 8, 9. The last one's always the hardest. So picture yourself in the 9th inning, bottom of the 9th, you're up at the plate, go run 300, see how tough you are.
Yeah, there's a huge mental component to that. If you can, when you're fatigued mentally, physically, do you show up and can you still meet the expectation of 55 seconds?
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I think that's cool, and I've seen that in other sports.
Yeah.
We would even have like 4 quarters, and then like coach would be like overtime. Like, I thought we were done.
Yeah,
it's but I think there's and you're doing it with your team.
Yes. Yep.
And I think that's also.
And we all obviously push each other when we're doing all this stuff.
Baseball players get the rap of having like big butts and they're lazy and they're fat and they're like the conditioning you're talking about is serious.
Yeah.
Do you feel like UVA separates himself with that, or do you feel like that's all college baseball? Like I feel that's.
Honestly, I think it's all of college baseball.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Sweet.
Every program basically has their own version of it. Some teams call it the Omaha Challenge, whatever. We just call it Iron Cavalier Challenge.
I think that's special because any kind of conditioning like that that's going to bring the team together, and it's done safely, obviously. You guys are pushing yourselves as a team, as a unit. Great for the staff, and it's going to root out the weak. Like, not everyone's going to make it.
Yeah, and you see it. Even if you don't make it, like, it's just about the effort that you put forward. If you're going to not make it and not try, then why are you here, you know?
Yeah, sure. And you're going to stand out, because if you knock over a cone, the team owes another one.
Yeah.
So, like, that accountability thing, right? Like
Yeah, exactly.
There's all team strategies to all that. We've touched on a lot here. Like, so the psychology of an injured athlete, your story through Little League, your conditioning, your strengthening that you've done. I guess one last question for you. How has everything that you've gone through help you, like, physically, like in your demands that you kind of like put on your body physically? Like, do you feel like, I've been through all this, I can do more? Like, because, like, I know you're always, like, you're a thinker, like, you're 1 or 2 steps ahead. So tell me, like, where you see yourself, like, physically the next couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I want to keep on improving. And I like to reflect on the past so I can improve myself in the future. So, like, I mean, I already talked about my surgery, but, like, thinking at times like that where I was at a really low place can help me in the future. And even like the Iron Cavalier Challenge, like, on days where I feel shitty and I don't feel like doing anything, like, think about those days where I was tired and I still did all this. Like, I've been through worse times in my life, and I know that I can continue to improve regardless of how I feel. So even if I don't feel like it that day, I know that I need to go do it. And there's a goal that I need to achieve. So I go every day trying to achieve that goal. And here when I'm home, I'm in here almost every day. You can account for that.
Yeah.
And I hit every day. So, I mean, I'm always doing something every day. I don't really like to take many off days. So I'm always doing something.
It's a mindset. That's all like, everything you just spoke about. And I've, like, studied this, like, read about it and tried to understand it. Because I get what you're saying. Because there's been times where I'm like, I don't really feel like lifting. Like, I'm good today.
Yeah.
But, like, that's all mindset. Like, when you reflect on times that were worse.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Then you appreciate times that are good, like now. No matter how bad it may seem right now. Like, you can reflect on worse times.
Yeah.
To change your perception that today is good.
Yeah.
Regardless of how you feel. So, and that's mindset. That's actually a pretty advanced level practice that you're doing, and you probably don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So that's awesome and special. I hope listeners take that home and actually use that on days they don't feel like getting up and going for their 2-mile run that they wrote down on their calendar, on their goals come, episode 1, season 2. So New Year's resolutions. So when you feel like you did your exercise yesterday, you don't need to go today. Think about that mindset approach. Coaching technique, where does that come from for you? Baseball is an all year round sport nowadays, at least around here. I advise that it be no more than 10 months a year, at least for throwing. Personally, there's travel teams everywhere with kids. You've actually trained kids nearby during COVID. I thought that was really cool of you. We know we've had some of our patients, athletes, work with you with some speed training and so forth. So when it comes to technique, and baseball is a huge technical sport, where have you gotten your training? And how do you search for more resources? Right? Are you YouTubing things? Like, we've looked at film of Yelich hitting. So, like,
my favorite.
Yeah, right. Really. So yeah, I'm curious. Like, technique, like, you've obviously had coached UVA, coached the Malvern, Little League. So tell me about, like, coaching techniques and where's your motivation and where do you get that from?
Yeah. I mean, I try and consider myself as a sponge, so I try and absorb as much information as possible. And you're going to hear so many different things throughout your career. I mean, my swing has changed so much, just even from last year. I'm always tinkering with things. I'm a big tinkerer with that stuff. But I'm all about what's comfortable with me and what works for me. You can try and find an ideal swing and try and make a perfect swing, but it's all about what works for you. And you're going to hear so many different things from so many other people. So like what I said about being a sponge, like obviously respect them and hear what they have to say. But one thing I always tell myself is try and take at least one thing that somebody tells me and put it into myself. At least one thing.
I like that.
Yeah.
And when you say somebody, you mean like a coach?
A coach,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I've heard so many positive things and intelligent things from coaches that I've had in the past, and I can tell you that at least one thing that they've said to me is still relevant within myself.
That's cool. That's special. Football is a sport where you have a lot of coaches, and you have coaches that are super relevant, meaning like you will spend hours with every day of practice.
Mm-hmm.
And you have coaches like game day coaches that like come around and they're like kind of like rah-rah coaches a little bit. But doesn't mean that they're not relevant, right? They're the ones who usually have like a motivational quote for you before a game or something.
Yeah.
And that's a unique perspective because I feel like as an athlete, you're like, all right, thanks, dude. Like, that's cool. Appreciate you, like, taking the time to speak to me. But, like, I need to focus on the game plan and what's happening today.
Yeah.
But to not ignore them and to take something away.
You have to be respectful.
Of course. And you can still be respectful. But to absorb something from them like you're talking about, that's special. That's pretty cool. Cool. So you look for every interaction you have with coaches to take something away, and you pick it. You're a sponge, so you pick and choose from different coaches, and you're constantly tinkering with your swing. How about like throwing technique, form in the field, and you've changed. Like you said, you've changed a lot so far in college. Do you feel like you have more to change, and if so, like who are you depending on for that?
I mean, I would say right now, I obviously depend a whole lot on my college coaches. But even the coaches that I've had in the past, like I'll still reach out to them and ask them for advice on certain things just because of the relationship that I've built with them in the past is like, it's somebody who I can trust throughout the rest of my career. Like, I mean, for the coaches that are listening, the biggest thing that I look for in a coach is a relationship. You want somebody who you're going to be able to talk to, at least sports-wise, on and off the field with just personal things. Like, I wouldn't want a coach who basically would just show up to the field and just be like, okay, do this, and that's it. Like, see you tomorrow. Like, I want to be able to go home and talk to them or call them about anything. I mean, that same thing goes with here. When I come here with you or Jordan, like, obviously we work in here, we grind in here, but even when I leave here, I'm still texting you guys, calling you guys, sharing video, whatever, talking about things like that. So that's really important for me. And that's been a part of for the kids who are trying to decide where they're going to college or in the recruiting process, like that was basically the tipping point for me. Was I wanted to go somewhere where I knew that I could have a good relationship with my coaches on and off the field, because that was so important to me in high school and throughout my earlier career that I wanted to be able to do the same thing because it worked for me in the past. So
I love it. I don't know how much more I got than that. I mean, that's what better way to end this podcast on. It's about relationships. I mean, we'll take a little bit from season 1 on this. Relationships is why I chose physical therapy, right? Like the connection you make with other people, and that's what you're talking about. You know, the connection and trust that you develop with your coaches that go beyond the task at hand, right? That we got to win this game, and I got to hit the ball, and I got to throw the ball.
Absolutely.
And then that way they understand you better, and if they understand you better, they know how to coach you better. That's cool stuff, man. What else you have to add? You're throwing around pearls. I'm letting you take the mic.
I don't know. I mean, just adding on to the last part, like you talked about a little bit how I trained kids when I was home for quarantine and stuff like that, and I saw just firsthand with that, and I implemented that stuff with the kids that I was training with the relationship aspect. The first thing I do after the lesson's over, I would just give them some like homework. And tell them I would give my number and make them send me some things. I'd just pick their brain a little bit And I always tell them, like, just text me whenever, any time of the day I'll answer. Because I know that that's such a big thing, and those kids do look up to me to be a role model, that it means a whole lot to them if they can have a relationship with me.
For you to put any kind of ego aside that anyone else in your position would have in coaching kids, to give them homework and give them your phone number. And I've seen kids look at you like, oh, that's Chris. Like, Chris is working out here. And, like, how they look at you. And you're like, yeah, man, what's up? How you doing? Like, how's the season coming along? Like, what position do you play?
Yeah.
You're, like, taking interest in them. And that goes a long way, man, because
I knew that when I was younger, I would want the same thing to happen to me when I was younger. I had plenty of kids that I looked up to when I was younger. Sometimes they would talk to me, sometimes they wouldn't. So, I mean, I just wouldn't want that to happen to anybody else. And I know how much that they do look up to me and how much of an impact I can make. So whenever I get the chance, I'm not going to turn somebody down.
That's dope. I like it. There's a lot of travel teams right now, more than I've ever heard of before. And it's interesting.
Absolutely.
It really is interesting. Like, new teams are even, like growing around here. And these kids aren't even playing, to my understanding, they're not even playing in the little league teams anymore. It's just like, oh, we just play travel now.
Yep.
And what's cool about it is, in some ways, is like they have good coaches, to my understanding. Mm-hmm. There's pressure on these coaches. I don't think parents are willing to acknowledge that, or maybe don't recognize it. I can tell you as a PT, these kids are playing on multiple teams. There's tryouts to make these teams. Parents are paying good money to put their kids on these teams. These coaches are in their 20s, maybe 30s. Like, they're younger coaches. Yeah. Probably still learning, like, coaches in their 50s and 60s are still learning to be better coaches, especially at that age, probably still learning to be better coaches. My brother's a head baseball coach at a high school, and he talks to me all the time about how he is still learning to be a coach. We'll have him on this season for sure. And that he has the same approach you have about relationships with kids, and he reads a lot of different stuff, et cetera. What I'm getting at with this is the pressure on some of these coaches and to win, or to make sure Tommy pitches this game or plays that position or bats 3 in the lineup and everything else. All those pressures, like, it goes back to what you just said. Like, it's about relationships, and it's about offering your input to help influence young minds and develop these relationships down the line. Like, get better, have fun.
Yeah.
You know,
that's why I still play the game, is to have fun. That's why I started to play the game. That's why I'm still playing the game. And that's why hopefully I'm still playing baseball in years to come. It's just to have fun. That's why I do it.
That's a wrap. I'm good, man. That's awesome. Chris, can you please let everyone know how to get in touch with you?
Yeah. You can reach through Mike. If you guys have Mike's phone number, he'll pass my number through.
Do you have an Instagram?
Yeah, I have an Instagram. It's at Chris_Newell. Follow me on Twitter. CNewell20. And yeah, that's it.
All right, that's a wrap. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the On Cue Performance Therapy Podcast. If you like this episode, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It would mean so much to me if you could leave us a 5-star review so more listeners like you could get this important information. See you next time.